Hello guys, my name is Prakash Pathak. First of all, a very warm welcome to after a very long time. So first of all, I'm sorry I was so much like late. The main reason was I was not having like good hardware to basically record these videos. So I was trying to record videos, but it was choppy and I do not want to give a bad quality video on this tutorial. So I worked hard, and as you can see, like little bit I got a Mac. So whatever the case is, let's start learning Redux Recoil right now. So what is Redux Recoil? First of all, what is this all about? So let's go to the official website right now. So I'll just change this to this one. I'll just close this one. So I'll just type React Recoil. Okay. By the way, this is an state management library. This is a global state management library, which is a very easy to learn as compared to Redux. And if you know how to use state, right, use state hook in React. If you don't know that, you first learn that and then come over here. But if you know that, that's all the knowledge which you require to basically learn Recoil. It's that easy. If you go to the documentation as well, you'll see the whole basic tutorial is in three, like intro, atoms, and selector. As well, like if I just can define it, it's like accessing the value, then the selector, and then like atoms. That's all, which is in actually learning this thing called Recoil. So to learn this, first of all, we'll be setting up a project on Code Sandbox. Okay, by the way, if you're thinking why the hell I'm coding this in Code Sandbox, it's actually easier to set up and it's like a little faster. That's the reason, right? So I'll just choose React as a template over here. And okay, so okay, so let's sign in. So if this requires sign in, it's okay. So first of all, what we'll do is just get lost. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll just add this library called Recoil. So Recoil. So once we have added Recoil as a library, what we have to do is, the first thing which we have to do is, let's make an authentication system as an example of using Recoil. So the authentication system will be, okay, so for making that, we'll also need React router DOM. So this one. So now let's make few other pages. By the way, we'll have this as JSX, right? Let's add one more page and we'll call it login.jsx. okay, let's call it signup.jsx, and let's have this app, which is the app which the user will be accessing. Let's say you want to store the authentication values globally throughout the application, right? So what we will do is we'll create a file which will name as, okay, not A, it will be called, come on, yeah, here it is. It will be called atom.js. okay, now this atom.js will be importing something called create from Recoil. If it will be ready to give me some suggestions, yeah, we'll be importing this create from Recoil. And the next thing which we'll be doing is we'll be creating our first atom. So what now, if you by the way, this is not how you do it. So import from Recoil. So the first thing which we need is atom. So atom is like a state, is a type of state, you can say. So let's create an atom. So it will be, say, auth atom. Okay, and this will be a new atom, right? And this takes two things. First of all, the default value. So our default value will be is auth, which is the default state. So let's say false. And user info is inside user info we can have a name. Let's call it J. Okay, not this. By the way, by default this will be null. Okay, so this is the default info, and then it takes a type, or what was it called, then it takes a key. So key should be like, for every atom the key should be unique. So for this, let's say this is like auth atom, so let's call it auth atom, right? So and then we will simply export this. So here, from here we can say export, and this is the auth atom. So let's save this. that's the atom which you have created. So this is now like you can think of it as a type and its default value. So atom consists of two things. First is the key. So is like key uniquely identifies every atom throughout the application, and this is the default value which it should have. Now how will you use this? Let's say in the app you want this to be something like let you only want to read the value. So there are a lot of method which is provided by the recoil. So I'll just show you that. Okay, so first is use recoil value. So this will only read the value of the state, not set it, right? So let's say we want to say auth, so auth data. Okay, auth data is equal to use recoil value, and now here in like inside this you have to pass whatever atoms, for example this is auth atom, so you have to provide the atom for that. So auth atom, right? Now you have the auth data. By the way, if you're thinking what is this auth data, it is whatever the value of this particular state it is. So by default it is false. So let's say if it like so let's call it use effect. So we want this thing to be like run whenever this auth state changes. So what is this auth state? This, sorry, is auth changes. Okay, so if the is auth is equal to false, it will basically take you to the, okay, if is auth is equal to false, or and let's do one thing. Let's make one more component over here, and okay, let's call it auth wrapper, and let's put this over here. So we'll get some children from the, okay, I think you're getting what I'm trying to spell. So we'll be getting some children. So what I'll do is I'll just use this fragment and pass the children over here, and now I'll use this over here. Now you'll see like how actually I use this. So I'll just cut this from here, paste this over here. So now this is the recoil value, and this is universal, by the way, this is globals, right? So if the is auth is equal to false, by the way, this is like is auth is not defined, that's correct. This is like auth data dot is auth data dot is auth. So if is auth is equal to false, then what we'll do is, by the way, this is like this is like auth data, not this. Yeah, so once that is done, like if there is like any change in the is auth, it will push it, like it will do one thing, right? So it will basically by the way, react router DOM, so we'll just say push use router use history, right? So let history is equal to use history, and let's say if there is anything like this, we'll just push it to the slash login, right? And if you're thinking like what will be rendered, by the way, what is that? History. Okay, let's pass that as well. So if there is any change in the history, then also this will be running. So this is the auth wrapper. Let's wrap our application inside the auth wrapper. Right. So finally you can see this is how it is actually working right now. Do we have any errors? We do not have any errors yet. The next thing what we'll be doing is actually wrapping this whole thing inside a browser router. So if you are familiar with React Router DOM, you must be familiar with browser router as well, because this actually helps us to route between various pages. So inside this we'll be having a switch, right? So inside the switch we'll just create two simple pages. First is the home page, which is like the page which is okay, so let's call it like the app page. So let main app, okay, and if like here, as here you will see, if we have logged in, right, so then only this will be so hi, this is the main app, right? And what we can do is actually we can just say over here that route, right, route path, if the path is like this, like at the home exact, the component which it should render is basically main app, right? So this is the main component. By the way, the recoil itself is not at all complex. This is like just setting up the environment for actually using React so that I can show you some practical use out of it. So that's why this is something like this. So let's call it login, and I think we have a login page as well. So we'll say login, something like that. Let's see, do we have anything in the login? Login, we don't have anything. That's so let's call it import React from React, let login be equal to return this is the login page, okay. And then what we'll do is we'll just simply export this, export default login, right? And let's save this and let's copy this all. So let's copy this full thing, and same thing we'll be doing in sign up. So sign up, this is the sign up page, yeah, done. So save this and let's go in the app, and let's provide this login thing over here, okay. And then we'll have finally a sign up. So we'll just paste this and we'll call it sign up, same thing over here, sign up. Finally what we have is basically we have the auth wrapper. I think we forgot to put the auth wrapper, so all the switch will be inside the auth wrapper. So we'll say auth wrapper. So basically this will be the authentication wrapper which we'll have. Initially I think this will take you to this login page for sure. Like if I just show you, if I just refresh this, let's see, does it work or not? Okay, it says recoil root component. This component must be used inside a recoil root component. So let's use this recoil root component. So we'll say import like recoil root, okay. And let's wrap everything what we have inside a recoil root component, okay. So control X, recoil root, okay. And okay, we had done a slight bit of mistake, so we need to hold options key and hit tab and control S. This is like, you can see like this is the login page, and this actually took us to the login page. If I could show you what happened, just see, because our state was false, right, our default state was false. By the way, your whole, wherever you want to use recoil as a state, that should be inside recoil root component. So as our state of authentication was actually false, this took us to the login page, right? And okay, so let's move ahead. Like we have the auth wrapper. So the next thing which we'll be doing is actually okay, we can remove exact from here, by the way. Yeah, so we can just work on this sign up as well as sign in. So how sign up sign in will work basically is sign up, there's no sign up functionality, so let's leave that. There's login functionality, so we'll be writing a hardcore login like without anything. So h1 login to app, right, and we'll have an input component which will say email ID, right, the placeholder will be an email ID, right? The next thing we'll be having is a password field. So we'll have a password and a password. Okay, so we'll just save this. We have the email ID, password, and a button called login. So a button called login. Okay, so we have an email ID, password, and a login button. The next thing what we'll be doing is actually whenever the user logs in, if the email ID is root@root.com and the password is whatever password it is, we'll be setting up the user and we'll try to log that user in, and we'll be doing all of this using the recoil state. So let's write a function called login user, right? This will be called whenever the user tries to log in. Then let's create the state. So let's call it auth state and set auth state. Okay, and this will be use state, right? Okay, by the way, this will by default this will have two things. First of all, email, which will be empty, and password, which will also be empty. So the next thing what we're doing is we'll just say on change. Whenever this changes, if we get an event, we'll say set auth state to whatever the auth state it is, and the change thing is email. So email will be e.target.value, right? So we'll just copy this on change function from here because it's like very much similar in the case of password as well. So we'll say password over here, okay, and save it. So we have the email and password for both of them, and now like whenever this login is clicked, so whenever there's an on click event in this over here, we'll just say login user. Okay, the next thing which we're doing is actually inside this login user. Okay, is it like visible? Should I make this bigger or like, yeah, I think that's much more visible right now. So login user, so whenever the user tries to log in, what will happen is basically we'll check basically if the auth state dot password is equal to root and the auth state dot email is equal to root@root.com, right? So if that is the case, then we want to set the global state, right? So how will you do that? That's pretty much simple. So we need some imports from the recoil. The imports are something like this. Okay, the first is use recoil state, right? So use set recoil state. So now this will actually help us to set the recoil state, and this is actually a function. So we can say let set auth state. By the way, we'll need both, so let's use recoil state. Okay, and this actually gives you two things, is equal to use recoil state. So this gives you, by the way, here it needs an atom, so auth atom, and this gives you two things. First of all, the state, so whatever the auth state it is. So by the way, the name is same, so let's call it auth and set auth. So set auth is the function by which you can set actually this authentication. So here what we'll do is we'll say set auth. Okay, first of all we'll just iterate whatever there is for by default from auth, and control Z. Okay, let's set it. So first of all, how is the structure? If you just see the atom, the structure is we have isauth and user info, right? So user info. Okay, so we have isauth, so isauth will be true, and user info, let's set some default info, right? So let's set some default info. The name will be, let's say, Jay. The email will be test@test.com, right? So now this will do what? This will actually set the state. By the way, here you can see we have both the state as well as the set state. Let's say you only require the set state and you do not need this state. What you can do is you can use set recoil state, and by the way, this will not be two things, then this will only be set auth, right? So this will not be two things, then this will only be a single thing, which is this one. So that's how you use it. By the way, there are a lot of selector hooks. We'll be discussing about most of them right now, but yeah, that's the thing. So if this is not the case, right, so if this is not the case, we'll just alert the user. So window dot alert wrong username and password, right? Save it. So if I write something else and try to log in, it will say wrong username and password. But if I write test, the required username and password, let's say test at the rate test.com, and once again it's root at the rate root.com, not test, root at the rate root.com, and the password is root. And if I just try to log in, that actually indeed sets the state to log in. By the way, here if we'll have to push this, and by the way, now we'll be allowed to basically, after doing this, we can just use the history hook to push this. So we'll say import from React router DOM, and what we can use is like use history, right? So now we can actually say let history is equal to use history, right? And here we can just pass the home page as history dot push the home page, right? And save it. So if we just now do it, if we just refresh this, okay, save this. Okay, I don't want to do that. Never. Okay, let's say root at the rate root.com and root as a password, and try to log in. You can see this is the main app, and we are able to actually we are able to be on the main app because in the state we have the auth state as true. And let's say we also want to display the name of the user over like below this hi, this is the main app. How will you do that? So to like, as we have already discussed, how to get the value of the state, like of the global state. By the way, this is not required that only one atom could be there could be multiple atoms. You could create as many atoms as you want, and if you want to use that, simply pass this over here as like inside the function use recoil value. It is auth atom, so it will access the like set state and the state value of the auth atom. Okay, so it is similarly you can create multiple of them. So now let's do one last thing, which is get the value of the state over here. So let's say let auth state be is equal to use recoil state. These are, by the way, selectors. So let's say auth state, auth atom, right? So once we have auth atom, what we can do is we can just say br over here, and we can say h1 over here, and we can say auth state dot okay, we can say auth state dot user info, I think user info dot name, right? So that's the name, and let's save it, and let's try to now log in. So if I just say root at the rate root.com and root, I can log in. Okay, there's an error. The error is because this is actually, the selection is wrong. So how basically we are gonna work around this? So the issue is, let's cut this off right now. The issue is that our state, the state which we have set is incorrect. So auth state, this is not use recoil state, it's use recoil value, and I think now this will be correct. Okay, cannot read property null of name. That's fine. If I just refresh this, I think this will be, so it says this is null, right? So this is null. So by the way, we'll be giving a question mark over here, and that should basically solve the issue. So let's save this, and now let's provide the root as a email ID and password. And now you can see like basically hi user, and this is the username, and that's how you can basically use a global state management library like Recoil. Okay, we can just remove this is not used. Okay, global state management like library like Recoil in your application. So that was it. By the way, this was Recoil tutorial. By the way, there are a lot more tutorials. Like there'll be one more state management tool, which is the stand. There will be a tutorial on that as well. So yeah, I think that's it. That's how you use Recoil. It's very, very simple. The only thing is you have to create an atom, then you have to pass it to a hook. So these are hooks, use Recoil value. So there are various selectors. So you can select it by like for setting the value, for getting the value, and all different ways. So thank you. That's it. Have a great day. Bye bye. And bye.